Hello, Caesar.
Hello there, Mr. Howard.
Huh? Howard? You can call me the ice cream man.
Oh, okay, ice cream man. What do you want?
Wanna buy some ice cream?
Oh, no. I already spent all my money on bananas.
Why don't you give me the bananas and I'll give you some ice cream?
Hello and welcome to Caesar's Snack Sandwich. Today we're on not Ethereum. Today we're on Binance. No. Today we're on Opera, the Phantom, so to speak. Yes, today we're on all three of these blockchains, taking a look at a protocol that is residing on all three of them and functioning deployed on all three, and it is Cream Finance. Now it's been a little while since I looked at Cream. I think I looked at it here when I talked about staking, making Cream, like staking for ETH 2.0 via Cream, and quite a while ago. Where's the other one? This one here, when I talked about lending platforms, Cream was one of them that I talked about there. Now I figured I'd revisit it because I've poked around a little bit and I've learned a few things and they've improved themselves. So I'd like to highlight some key things that set Cream aside from the other lending protocols and make it special in its own way. Okay, and let's get right into it. So if we go to the Cream website, it's cream.finance, and you'll be met with this page. You can go to the forums, ask questions, propose things and so forth, and we can go to the app. And then here we are on the Cream platform. The Cream platform is quite good. So right now I'm connected to this with my Ethereum wallet, but if I go to MetaMask here and I just click Ethereum and let's say change it to Binance Smart Chain. Wait for this to load. And you see it automatically just switches over and it starts to show me the assets on Binance Smart Chain. So this is pretty clever. You don't have separate websites. You don't have different things. Everything looks the same and familiar as it would over there, but the asset pools are different. Okay, so to talk about the different asset pools, well, let me give you a quick idea of what's going on here. Okay, so basically this is a lending and borrowing platform where you can lend some assets and you can borrow some assets. Now it's usually not a good idea to lend USDT and then borrow USDT because you will get a net loss, right? Because it's obviously not a good idea. So what people usually do, generally there are two kinds of lenders and borrowers. For the most part, there are some speciality people as well, but we can generally chunk them into two kinds. We can generally tuck them into people who lend their assets here, like maybe they're lending stable coins and they want people to borrow their stable coins. And then we have other people who lend maybe Bitcoin or something like this. They get Bitcoin and they use the value of this Bitcoin to borrow the stable coins, and they use the stable coins for farming. So there's generally two kinds of people in here, but there are some special ones as well, maybe taking advantage of this huge cake pool here, and who knows, right? So there's different strategies, but that's generally the idea of those two major ones. So let's take a look at the markets, and I'm going to talk about some individual opportunities that Cream offers that other places don't. So into the markets we go. So here we have the market info of all three blockchains. Now these two here are actually both on Ethereum. So version 1 is Ethereum and Iron Bank is on Ethereum. Now Iron Bank is a kind of Yearn Cream merger type thing. Now this is a very special case. I will talk about this more after, and when I explain some things about Iron Bank that makes it very special. And then we have Binance Smart Chain and Phantom. So let's go down through some of these tokens here on the Ethereum version. And we see here's a YCRV. And here we have YUSD. And we have YWETH. So these are all share tokens, for liquidity pools or vaults and stuff. This is a liquidity pool on Y Curve, and this is a Y Vault, and this is a Y Vault, Yearn Vault. So these are actually tokens that have yield put into them already. These are yield bearing tokens. They are producing yield for you already, and most people will leave these sitting in their wallet. But if they were to take their YUSD and put it in here, they could gain roughly 17%. Now remember, these numbers fluctuate day to day, hour to hour, as people buy and lend and return money and so forth. So it's basically a mathematical difference between the supply and the demand, right? So this is very special that you can borrow or you can lend out your yield-bearing tokens and then maybe come and borrow some whatever you want, right? Maybe USDC and put those in another vault or put them right in the same vault, right? So you get the idea, right? So going down, what else was special in here? Oh, here, Uniswap LP tokens. There's not a whole lot of places where you can take your LP tokens and use them to borrow. So you could take the value of these LP tokens that's inside them and use them to borrow some other token, right? We can use SushiX, which is also, a yield-bearing token on its own, and a whole bunch of SushiSwap LPs. So this is quite special, okay? This is a pretty special thing you can do with Cream that you can't do with the other lending platforms out there, okay? Now, if we swing over to Iron Bank, well, let's skip Iron Bank for now and come back to it. Binance Smart Chain. We see another thing. Now, Binance Smart Chain doesn't have a whole lot of competition on borrowing and lending. It basically has only Venus. And if I go to Venus, let's open that right now. Okay, so here we are on the markets of Venus, and you can see there's a fair amount of tokens, but it doesn't even come close to what you can borrow and lend on the Cream Binance Smart Chain. There's quite a bit more. Okay, now also, some of these tokens are like on both. So like Cardano, maybe you want to lend Cardano here, or maybe you want to lend Cardano here. It's this one is rewarded or incentivized with XVS tokens. So most people will put their Cardano here, but something like maybe, Wi-Fi token, YFI token, if you had it here on the Binance Smart Chain, if you had brought it over, you wouldn't be able to lend it on Venus, but you could use that value here. I'm pretty sure it's in here. Where is it? Yeah, here it is, YFI token. So there are some choices here on Cream Binance Smart Chain that are not on Venus, so you can take advantage of that as well. And there's some really special ones like Cake. Look at this, 113% for lending your Cake on Cream. And then you can also borrow a different token versus this value, right? So it's not just merely you gain this asset, you can also borrow it. Now you have to take care of your borrowing and lending. You have to pay attention to your collateral ratio. You don't want to borrow too much and then get liquidated. Now this is a topic for another video. I don't want to get into all of that right now, but that's something you would have to learn about. This is not just a free lunch, right? Just be careful about that, okay? Learn more about that before you do this, but if you know what you're doing, then this is information that I think you can take advantage of, okay? So even some wrapped Bitcoin, Ren BTC and Ren Zcash. Well, I haven't seen those around too much, but there. So on Phantom, which is Opera, right? And if you go down, there's quite a few as well, okay? Now, this is probably the biggest supply. As you can see, the total supply is... Where is it? Total supply is 300K. There's not a whole lot of total value locked yet into the Phantom Cream contract because there's not a whole lot of going on Phantom quite yet. But I'm sure it will, start to pick up eventually, and some more and more tokens will get used in here and utilized. Okay, so over to Iron Bank. Now, Iron Bank is a very special case. This is a pool. Now it's separate from this pool. They are both on ETH, but the actual assets are in different pools. So as you can see, the total supply here is 150 million, and here there is 250 million. Now this is not 100. It's a total of 400 million if you were to combine them. These are different assets, a different pool, and they're not the same. Okay. Now, some of the tokens in here that can be borrowed and lent is compound tokens. So this is quite special, okay? So you could lend your DAI or your USDT or your compound USDC on compound and bring your compound token here and gain some more interest on people when people borrow it, okay? Now, currently the interest is not very high. It's actually very low because people are not doing this, but this is something that they've set up. They want to get it to be utilized, right? Now, another important thing to mention about Iron Bank is it doesn't actually reside on the Cream Finance website. It actually resides here on version 1 yearn.finance lending, and you can come here to supply these tokens if you wish. Okay. Another thing that I found that to be kind of interesting was that this actual compound CUSD token, if you go to compound actually, and you can find, I can I could supply Tether here and people could borrow Tether, right? So I could do that, right? And I could supply these other tokens and stuff like that, but I could supply Tether here and gain 9% and people could borrow at about 11 or 11.6% currently. But if we go to the actual Tether here on Compound Finance, the market information, we go down, we see that it actually has a collateral factor of 0. So even if you supply Tether here, you can't borrow against this Tether. So if you have a whole bunch of Tether and you put it in here, you wouldn't be able to borrow anything against this Tether. However, if you took that C token, that Tether C token, and you stuck it in Cream here, then you could borrow against it. Okay, so that's pretty interesting, I think, right? Now, the last thing that I hear a lot about Cream is, well, they were hacked or exploited or whatever, right? But this is actually pretty far from the truth, actually. Like Cream Finance, the Iron Bank actually performed the way it was supposed to. There was no issues. They didn't do anything wrong. And if you go through this article here by REKT, right, I'll have links to actually this entire website in the description below, because I think this website provides interesting information. This is basically a description of what the hack was and what happened, and it's pretty in-depth and so forth, and you can read it and get a very good understanding, but I'll give you the gist of it in some simple English, okay? Basically, the idea of this Iron Bank is that certain protocols can borrow from this pool without providing collateral. They don't need to provide collateral to the pool, and they can borrow against it. They still have to pay the borrow APY, right? They still have to pay for what they borrow, but they don't actually have to supply any collateral first. So what Cream does is they look at the protocols that want to do this, and they assess their risk level and their ability to pay back any losses that might occur, and they grant that access to those people. So they had granted that access to Alpha Finance, and Alpha Finance was the person who was hacked. And what the hacker basically did, and this is a real simplification, was they basically made some Alpha Hormore fake ID, and they took that fake ID over to Iron Bank, right? And they borrowed a bunch of tokens, and then they borrowed a whole bunch of tokens, and then they supplied them somewhere else, and they borrowed. But that's basically the idea. So Cream didn't do anything wrong. It has never been hacked, and this actual contract is quite solid, and it hasn't had any faults. It was just one of the culprits, or one of the tools that the hacker used. It would be like saying, the hacker stole a bunch of funds from one protocol and then went to Curve and swapped the tokens on Curve and say Curve was part of the exploit. So it's not quite the same idea, right? It's a little bit of a stretch to compare these to, this Iron Bank's involvement with Curve's involvement, but it's not a complete stretch, right? So anyway, I hope this has been useful, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and I can't really, cover everything in one little video, but I just wanted to share some of the things I found today and some of the interesting things I saw when I was looking at Cream today. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.